The Silent Vanguard. They're just stories, High Commander, nothing more. Admiral Zex Veril of the Galactic Confederacy stared at the holographic star charts with his 4 eyes narrowed in concentration. The junior officer who had spoken shifted uncomfortably under his superior's silence. Stories don't send subspace ripples through 17 sectors, Lieutenant, Zex Veril finally replied, his scaled fingers tracing the anomalous readings that had been detected at the edge of Confederate space. And they certainly don't disable 3 of our most advanced reconnaissance drones. The phenomena had begun 3 stellar cycles ago. Strange energy signatures emanating from Sector 42, a region of space long considered uninhabitable due to intense radiation from a nearby pulsar. No one ventured there, and for good reason. Yet something was stirring in that cosmic wasteland. The Council believes it's a natural phenomenon, sir. Perhaps a new type of stellar remnant or... The Council believes what is convenient. Zex Veril cut in. I've been studying these patterns for months. They're methodical, deliberate. He expanded the hologram, revealing more detailed readings. Look at these energy signatures. They pulse at regular intervals, almost like communication protocols. The lieutenant's antennae twitched nervously. But sir, that would mean that someone is out there. Someone advanced enough to withstand the pulsar's radiation. Zex Veril's inner eyelids blinked slowly, or perhaps someone who has been there all along. In the Grand Assembly Hall of Nexus Prime, capital of the Galactic Confederacy, representatives from over 300 species gathered for an emergency session. The vast chamber, with its swirling nebula-inspired architecture, hummed with nervous energy as delegates whispered among themselves. First Speaker Thorian of the Jelvari stepped to the central platform, her luminescent skin pulsing with stress patterns. Esteemed delegates, she began, her voice amplified throughout the hall. We face an unprecedented situation. Our scientific division has confirmed that the anomalies in Sector 42 are artificial in origin. A murmur swept through the assembly. Furthermore, she continued, we have received a transmission. The holographic display above the platform activated, showing a simple sequence of mathematical equations followed by a series of images, star charts, atomic structures, and finally, a bipedal form that made several delegates gasp. As you can see, Thorian said, her voice now barely controlled, the transmission appears to originate from a species matching ancient descriptions of humans. The assembly erupted in chaos. Delegates rose from their seats, some shouting in disbelief, others in fear. Silence. Thorian commanded, we must approach this rationally. A delegate from the Vaserix Collective raised his appendage. First Speaker, humans are mythological creatures. Stories told to hatchlings about the species that supposedly preceded us all. There has never been any concrete evidence of their existence. Until now, countered Admiral Zex Veril, who stood at the edge of the platform. The transmission contains detailed knowledge of our Confederacy, knowledge that could only have been gathered through extensive observation. If these are humans, they've been watching us. For how long, we cannot say. The Vaserix delegate scoffed. This is absurd. The most likely explanation is that this is a hoax perpetrated by separatist elements, or perhaps a new species seeking to intimidate us by invoking ancient legends. Then how do you explain this? Zex Veril activated his personal datapad, projecting the new image above the platform. It was a vessel, sleek, angular, and unlike any ship in the Confederate fleet. It glided silently through the void, its surface seemingly absorbing light rather than reflecting it. This was captured by a long-range sensor array 6 hours ago. It entered Confederate space, bypassed 3 security checkpoints without triggering a single alarm, and is currently on a direct course for Nexus Prime. The hall fell silent. The implications were clear. Whatever this vessel was, it had technology far beyond their own. The Council has authorized me to leave a diplomatic envoy to intercept this vessel, Zex Veril continued. We will attempt peaceful contact and ascertain their intentions. First Speaker Thorian nodded gravely. This assembly stands adjourned until Admiral Zexferel returns with more information. May the cosmic forces guide your mission, Admiral. As delegates filed out, many casting nervous glances at the image of the mysterious ship, Zexferel turned to his lieutenant. Prepare the flagship, and Lieutenant, have the weapons systems on standby. The Confederate flagship Eternal Vigilance hung in the void, its massive form dwarfed by the emptiness of space. Before it, the unknown vessel had come to a stop, maintaining a distance of exactly 10,000 kilometers, close enough for communication, yet far enough to give it ample time to react to any aggressive moves. In the command center, Admiral Zexferel studied the ship with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Up close, its design was even more impressive. No visible propulsion systems, weapons arrays, or even external sensors. Yet there was a sense of latent power, like a predator at rest. "We've been broadcasting standard greeting protocols for 30 minutes, sir," reported his communications officer. No response. Zexferel frowned. "Switch to all known frequency patterns, including historical archives. If these really are humans, they might be using outdated communication methods." As the crew worked, a science officer approached, her expression troubled. "Admiral, our scans cannot penetrate their hull. It's as if the scanning beams are simply disappearing." "Disappearing," Zexferel echoed. "That's impossible. Energy cannot just." "Admiral," the communications officer's voice was sharp with surprise. "We're receiving a transmission. Audio only." "Let's hear it." The voice that filled the command center was smooth, measured, and spoke in flawless galactic standard, the common tongue of the Confederacy. "Confederate vessel, this is Captain Elena Reyes of the Earth ship Phantom. We acknowledge your attempts at communication and appreciate your patience." Zexferel's hearts raced. Earth, the mythical homeworld of humanity. "This is Admiral Zexferel of the Galactic Confederacy. We welcome you to our space. Your presence has caused quite a stir among my people." A pause. Then, "Yes, we expected as much. It's not every day a ghost story comes to life, is it, Admiral?" There was a hint of amusement in the voice that made Zexferel uneasy. "May I ask why you have chosen now to reveal yourselves? If your species truly exists, why have you remained hidden for so long?" "We've never been hidden, Admiral. Merely overlooked. Your Confederacy designated our region of space as uninhabitable due to the pulsar's radiation. It makes for an excellent natural barrier. We've been watching your civilization develop, studying your strengths and weaknesses, your politics and cultures." A chill ran down Zexferel's spine. "For what purpose?" "Assessment, Admiral. Nothing more. Yet, are your intentions peaceful?" Zexferel asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "That depends entirely on your Confederacy. We have no desire for conflict, but we will not be dismissed or marginalized. Not again." "Again?" Zexferel's curiosity overcame his caution. "What do you mean?" "History is written by the victors, Admiral, or in this case, by those who believe they were the only ones left to write it. Your ancient records speak of humans as myths because that's what suited the founders of your Confederacy. The truth is far more complicated." Before Zexferel could respond, the ship's sensors blared with urgent alerts. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "we're detecting multiple spatial distortions." Space itself seemed to ripple around them, and suddenly, the Phantom was no longer alone. Ships, dozens of them, then hundreds, emerged from what appeared to be tiers in the fabric of space-time itself. They varied in size and design, but all bore the same light-absorbing material as the Phantom. As a show of good faith, Captain Rice continued, seemingly unfazed by her fleet's dramatic entrance, "I'm sending you coordinates for a diplomatic meeting. Your council representatives are welcome to join us there in 10 standard days. Until then, Admiral, I suggest you convince your superiors that the human myth deserves their full attention." The transmission cut off, and Zex stared at the armada before him. It was larger than the entire Confederate defense fleet, a force that could lay waste to Nexus Prime in hours. "Sir," his lieutenant prompted, "your orders." Zex couldn't tear his eyes away from the display. "Send word to the Council. Tell them the humans are real. And they've been watching us all along." The council chambers were in an uproar. Admiral Zex report had sent shockwaves through the Confederate leadership, and now 12 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy argued like market vendors over how to respond. "We should mobilize every ship, every soldier," shouted Councillor Draz, his chitinous exoskeleton rattling with agitation. "This is clearly the prelude to an invasion. And start a war we cannot win," countered Councillor Philin, her gelatinous form rippling with distress. "The Admiral's report makes it clear their technology far exceeds our own." "Perhaps this is an opportunity," suggested Councillor Tarn, the eldest among them. "A chance to expand our knowledge, to forge new alliances." First Speaker Thorian raised her hands for silence. "Admiral Zex, in your assessment, what are the humans' true intentions?" Zex chose his words carefully. "They seem resentful, as if they believe they have been wronged by our Confederacy. Yet they offered diplomatic talks rather than immediate aggression. I believe they are testing us, evaluating our response." "Testing us?" Draz scoffed. "They revealed an armada capable of devastating our worlds. That's not a test. It's a threat." "Perhaps both," Zex admitted. "But consider this. If they wanted war, why announce themselves at all? Why not simply attack?" The chamber fell silent as the council considered his words. "There's more," Zex continued. "Our historical division has been researching mentions of humans in our oldest records. They found something disturbing." He activated a holographic display, showing ancient text and diagrams. According to these fragments, humans were not just another species. They were pioneers, among the first to develop faster-than-light travel. They established contact with dozens of early spacefaring civilizations, including ancestors of several Confederate members. "So what happened to them?" asked Councillor Philin. "The records are incomplete, but they suggest a conflict, a massive war that ended with humanity's apparent extinction. The founders of our Confederacy emerged from this chaos, unifying the survivors and establishing the galactic order we know today. Are you suggesting our Confederacy was built on the ashes of humanity?" Thorian asked, her voice barely audible. "I'm suggesting that the history we've been taught may be incomplete, and these humans, who have clearly not been extinct all this time, believe we owe them a reckoning." The council exchanged troubled glances. "We must prepare for the diplomatic meeting," Thorian finally declared, "and simultaneously ready our defenses. If these humans seek peaceful coexistence, we will welcome them. If they seek war," she didn't finish the thought. She didn't need to. As the meeting adjourned, Zex lingered, staring at the holographic representation of the human fleet. Something about their emergence troubled him deeply. It was as if they had been there all along, hidden in plain sight, watching and waiting. And now, for reasons known only to them, humanity had decided the time for hiding was over. Reckoning Dawn. The diplomatic station orbiting neutral space gleamed like a jewel against the backdrop of stars. Designed as a symbol of Confederate unity, its grand meeting chambers had hosted countless negotiations over the centuries, but never one quite like this. Admiral Zex stood at the observation deck, watching as the human delegation's shuttle approached. Unlike their warships, this vessel was smaller, elegant, almost delicate in appearance. Yet it moved with the same unsettling precision, as if space itself accommodated its passage. "They're early," noted First Speaker Thorian, who stood beside him. "By exactly 12 minutes. A deliberate choice, I suspect," Zex replied. "Everything they do seems calculated to send a message." The Confederate delegation consisted of 7 representatives, including Thorian and Zex. They had been chosen for their diplomatic experience and diverse perspectives, a cross-section of the Confederacy's leading species. Together, they represented over 1 trillion sentient beings, a fact that had always filled Zex Veril with pride. Now, faced with humanity's return, that pride felt suddenly hollow. "How many do you think they'll send?" asked Counselor Phelan. "If I were them, I'd send 3, Zex Veril answered. "Enough to show confidence, few enough to demonstrate they don't consider us a significant threat." The human shuttle docked with mathematical precision. The airlock cycled, and the chamber doors slid open to reveal one person. A single human stepped into the chamber. Female, by Zex Veril's limited understanding of their dimorphism. Tall and lean, with dark skin and hair pulled back tightly from her face. She wore a simple black uniform with no visible insignia or decorations. "Greetings," she said, her voice echoing in the suddenly silent chamber. "I am Admiral Kira Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Thorian recovered first, stepping forward with hands raised in the universal gesture of peaceful intent. "Welcome, Admiral Chen. I am First Speaker Thorian of the Galactic Confederacy. We are honored by your presence." Chen's expression remained neutral. "Are you honored by a myth come to life?" She surveyed the delegation with piercing eyes. "Or are you simply afraid?" Zex Veril felt a flash of indignation, quickly followed by grudging respect for her directness. "Both, perhaps," Thorian admitted. "Your arrival has challenged everything we thought we knew about our history. And yes, your military capabilities have caused concern among our people." Chen nodded, seemingly satisfied with the honesty. "Then let us speak plainly. The human race has lived in the shadow of your confederacy for over 2,000 years. We watched as you built your empire on foundations that once belonged to us." "If I may," interjected Counselor Tarn, "our historical records contain very little about humanity. What exactly are you referring to?" Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Your confederacy was founded after the Great Purge, what your history books call the Chaos War, a conflict that supposedly wiped out several ancient species, including humans. And this is not accurate," Thorian asked cautiously. "The war happened," Chen confirmed. "But it wasn't chaos. It was orchestrated by the Vaserix Collective and their allies." All eyes turned to the Vaserix delegate, whose facial ridges flushed deep orange. "That is an outrageous claim," he sputtered. "The Vaserix have been peaceful members of the Confederacy since its inception. After ensuring your rivals were either extinct or too devastated to challenge you." Chen countered coldly. Humanity was on the verge of establishing the Galactic Coalition based on shared knowledge and mutual respect. The Vaserix saw this as a threat to their territorial ambitions and formed a secret alliance with 4 other species to systematically destroy human colonies. Zex Veril felt a chill run through him. The accusation was monstrous. Genocide on an unimaginable scale. Yet something in the human's unwavering gaze made it impossible to dismiss her words as mere propaganda. "Earth itself was targeted last," Chen continued. "But we had prepared. Our homeworld was evacuated, and a small fraction of our fleet, along with millions of civilians, retreated to the radiation zone you now call Sector 42. We developed technology to harness the pulsar's energy, shielding our presence from detection. If this is true," Thorian said, her voice trembling slightly, "why reveal yourselves now? After all this time?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because history has a way of repeating itself. We've observed concerning patterns in Confederate expansion. The same aggressive resource acquisition, the same dismissal of lesser species. We decided it was time for humanity to re-emerge, to ensure the mistakes of the past are not repeated." "You speak of peace," Zex Veril noted, "yet you arrive with a fleet capable of devastating our worlds. Would you have taken us seriously otherwise?" Chen asked simply. "When your confederacy encounters a new, technologically inferior species, do you approach them as equals? Or do you guide them into roles that serve Confederate interests?" The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. "We don't seek war," Chen assured them, "but we will no longer remain silent witnesses to history. Humanity demands recognition, reparations for the colonies we lost, and a seat at the Confederate Council. And if we refuse," the Vaserix delegate challenged. Chen's smile was cold. "Then we will take what we are owed." The meeting concluded shortly thereafter, with both sides agreeing to reconvene after the Confederate Council had time to discuss humanity's demands. As Chen departed, Zexverel found himself troubled by a question that lingered in his mind. What if she was telling the truth? 3 days later, Zexverel stood before the full council, delivering his assessment of the diplomatic meeting. "In my judgment, the humans are serious about their claims and their demands. Whether their version of history is accurate or not, they believe it to be true, and they have the military power to act on that belief. We cannot simply capitulate to these myths," the Vaserix representative protested. "It would undermine the very foundation of our confederacy." "Perhaps our foundation needs examining," Councillor Tarn suggested quietly. "I've commissioned an independent investigation into our oldest archives. Preliminary findings suggest there may be merit to the humans' claims. Records from that era show evidence of systematic deletion and alteration." A murmur ran through the chamber. "Even if their historical grievances have some basis in fact," argued Councillor Draz, "we cannot allow an unknown power to dictate terms to the Confederacy. It sets a dangerous precedent." "More dangerous than war," Zexverel countered. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their ships can traverse space in ways we barely understand. If they choose to attack, I am not confident in our ability to defend our core worlds." The debate raged for hours, eventually settling on a compromise. They would offer humanity limited recognition and a pathway to Confederate membership, but no reparations and no immediate council seat. It was, Zexverel knew, a decision born of pride rather than wisdom. As he prepared the official response to transmit to the human fleet, a priority alert flashed across his terminal. Multiple Confederate outposts near the Vaserix homeworld had gone silent simultaneously. "What do you mean, the planets are gone?" First Speaker Thorian's voice rose in disbelief. The emergency session of the Council had been called at the darkest hour of the Nexus Prime night cycle. Holographic displays showed the affected region, a cluster of systems that formed the industrial heart of the Vaserix collective. "Not the planets themselves," clarified the head of Confederate intelligence, his feathers ruffled with stress. "The colonies, the outposts, the mining stations, everything built by the Confederacy in those systems has been neutralized." "Casualties?" Zexverel asked, dreading the answer. "Minimal, surprisingly. Automated defense systems were the first targets, followed by military installations. Civilian populations were given evacuation notices, precise timetables delivered in their native languages, before any infrastructure was dismantled." "Dismantled," Thorian echoed. "For lack of a better term, yes. The humans didn't destroy these installations. They unmade them. Molecular deconstruction on a scale we've never seen before. The materials were left in neat orbital piles." The intelligence chief's voice held reluctant admiration. "It's as if they wanted to demonstrate they could unmake our civilization without killing a single civilian." The Vaserix delegate pounded his appendage against the table. "This is an act of war. We must respond with everything we have." "Everything we have would not be enough," Zexverel stated bluntly. This was a surgical demonstration of power, a warning. If they wanted war, they could have vaporized those planets entirely. "The Admiral is correct," Councillor Tarn agreed. "This is humanity showing restraint while proving their capabilities. They targeted Vaserix territory specifically, the very species they accuse of orchestrating their near extinction." A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. "We've received a new communication from Admiral Chen," the intelligence chief reported. Text only. It reads, "The Vaserix collective built their prosperity on the ruins of 17 human colonies, We have reclaimed what was stolen. This is not war. This is balance. Your response to our original terms is awaited." First Speaker Thorian closed her eyes briefly, then straightened her posture. "It seems we have underestimated both humanity's resolve and their capabilities. I propose we reconsider their demands in light of this demonstration." Even the Vaserix delegate remained silent. His earlier bluster evaporated in the face of such overwhelming technological superiority. "There is one more thing," the intelligence chief added hesitantly. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual activity in the galactic rim. It appears humanity's presence extends far beyond Sector 42. We've identified what could be settlements, outposts, possibly even entire hidden worlds spread throughout regions we considered uninhabitable or unexplored." "How many?" Zexferel asked. "Thousands, possibly tens of thousands. We're still processing the data, but the pattern is clear. Humanity hasn't just been hiding. They've been expanding, parallel to our Confederacy but invisible to our sensors. Their civilization may be comparable to our own in size and scope." The revelation hit the Council like a physical blow. Not only were humans real, not only were they technologically superior, but they might represent a civilization as vast and complex as the Confederacy itself. "We have no choice," Thorian finally declared. "We must accept their terms, all of them." One standard month later, Admiral Zexverel stood in the newly reconstructed Grand Assembly Hall of Nexus Prime. The chamber had been redesigned to accommodate a new section, a curved segment of seats reserved for humanity and their representatives. Admiral Kira Chen approached him, her uniform now bearing the insignia of both Earth and the Confederacy. "Admiral Zexferel," she greeted him. "Your support during these negotiations has been noted and appreciated." He inclined his head slightly. "I simply advocated for what I believed was right and practical." A hint of a smile touched her lips. "Pragmatism, a quality humans and your species share, I think." "If I may ask," Zexverel ventured, "something has puzzled me since our first encounter. Your ships, your technology, they're clearly centuries beyond our own. You could have conquered the Confederacy at any time. Why emerge now? Why seek partnership rather than dominance?" Chen considered him for a moment. "Did you know that before the Great Purge, humans had a saying? Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. The Vaserix and their allies tried to exterminate us because they feared our influence. They chose dominance over cooperation, and in doing so, nearly destroyed a species that could have been their greatest ally." She gestured to the assembly chamber, where representatives from hundreds of species were gathering. "We hid and rebuilt not just to survive, but to learn from that mistake. Power without wisdom is just another form of weakness. We could conquer, yes, but then we would become what we once fought against." Zexverel found himself nodding slowly, a perspective that has been lacking in our Confederacy, perhaps. "Which is why we're here," Chen replied. "Not to replace your civilization with ours, but to ensure that both evolve beyond the mistakes of our shared past." As the session began, and First Speaker Thorian formally welcomed humanity into the Confederacy, Zexverel reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this point. The myth had become reality, the forgotten had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the vast chamber, representatives of over 300 species, now including humans, prepared to write a new chapter in galactic history.